Hello everybody. I do apologize for this video being late. I did promise that I was going to put out this video last week, but things got in the way. I got very busy all of a sudden and I was able to do this today. So I do apologize for the delay. To make up for this, I also decided that today, later today I should say, I will be releasing the Benny Hinn series that I did in April of this year. I just want to give a quick note that I will be talking about Neville Cooper's past, including his sexual assault allegations. So please, if you're triggered by that, I advise you not to watch because there's also a lot of other triggering things here. And don't worry, my Sims series will be coming back shortly. So enjoy this video and keep an eye out for the Benny Hinn video that I will be posting later today. Also, apologies for the audio being wacky. It's TikTok, so apologize for that. Bye. Hello everybody. In honor of my birthday weekend, I decided to talk about Gloriavale. And sorry for the hair being messy. I don't care today. So I know I said that I was going to talk about one of the episodes that was on Amazon Prime, the docuseries. But after watching it again, I realized I need to talk about the history of Gloriavale because it seems appealing if you just watch it without knowing anything about the group, the organization, and the founder, Neville Cooper. Don't worry, we will talk about different aspects of Gloriavale throughout my series. I don't know how many parts it's going to be, so just follow along with the ride. So here's the rundown. We're going to talk about the founder, Neville Cooper. We're going to talk about what rules and establishments and all that they do throughout the organization and where they're standing now, because it's kind of went downhill since Neville Cooper died back in 2018. But we'll get into all that, so stay tuned. So let's start off by talking about the leader, the founder of Gloriavale, Neville Cooper. And I'm just going to say this right off the bat, he's a horrible person, and I will show you why. So this is Neville Cooper. There's only a few things we actually know about his childhood. When he was 12, he left school. When he was 16, he got kicked out of his house. And when he was 21, he was a born-again Christian. After Neville Cooper became a born-again Christian in his 20s, that's when he met his wife Gloria, who was 16 at the time. Yeah, don't worry, this isn't the only creepy pattern he has. After they got married and started having kids, he realized he wanted to become an evangelical pastor. After getting kicked out of multiple churches in his home country of Australia, he decided to take his ministry on the road. At this time, tent revivals were becoming huge in the United States, the Pentecostal movement, and preachers like Billy Graham who didn't have an established church. So he decided to ride on that bandwagon, and he eventually wound up in New Zealand. In the next part, we're going to talk about the plane crash he survived and how he settled ground in New Zealand. So in 1965, while Neville was traveling with his wife, who was pregnant at the time, and two other people that were probably flying the plane, he actually got into a plane crash in Queensland. He miraculously survived, as well as the other three people, and his wife, who was pregnant, did not lose the child, which is a miracle in itself. However, many people theorize that this is the reason how Neville Cooper became extreme with his beliefs. Although I've read and listened several places that he's always had these extreme beliefs, but this probably gave him a God complex as well, saying that God chose him to survive this plane crash. And he wound up in New Zealand after gaining a huge following there. And he said, why not just settle there for a while? And he wound up living there for the rest of his life. It was in New Zealand he decided to create this utopia place for Christians in a communal setting. It was also around this time that they inherited a farm and they decided to go into the farming business in order to get money for their new. So in 1969, Neville Cooper founded what would later be called Gloriavale, although it wasn't called that at the time, which I will explain why in a bit. It was actually called Springbrook Christian Community up until 1991. And actually the people that were part of this community were called Cooperites, which is basically play off of Neville's last name, and yeah, that's pretty much it. This location is actually on the east side of New Zealand on the South Island. And throughout the years, their businesses started to grow and they started to gain more people. They started expanding businesses, including their own farming business. They started getting into textiles and construction business, and even owned an airplane later on. I guess Neville's not scared of airplanes after what he survived. This is also around the time Neville started laying down the groundworks, which would be modern day Gloriavale, including girls dressing modestly, wearing head cover, and arranged marriages, which I will explain in the next part. Neville Cooper started to become a lot more controlling of his group. You weren't even allowed to get married unless Neville Cooper approved of your marriage. He had a list of people in the group, and he was basically keeping track of if any people were related to each other through marriage, birth, whatever. And this still goes on to this day, which I will talk about when we get to a breakdown of the episode. Neville was also starting to build dormitories, basically, which are still going on to this day, which I will get into when we get to the episode. And he also built schoolhouses, which all the kids in the group started going to instead of a regular school. However, by the 90s, they were really a big group, and this is when Neville decided to buy property on the west coast of New Zealand on the South Island, which is a lot bigger and a lot cheaper at the time. It was also around this time that his first wife Gloria passed away. So after they bought the property, they decided to name it Gloriavale after her. However, there's always a dark side to this. So in 1995, Neville Cooper changed his name to Hopeful Christian, and he told his followers to basically make names that were biblical or biblically related. You have names in the group like Dovela, Samuel Valor, and Vigilant Standfast. However, in 1995, that's when the law caught up with Neville. And yeah, I'm going to be calling him Neville Cooper. I know he technically changed his name, but I want people to know his real name. In 1995, that's when the New Zealand police caught up with him. He was accused, and I'm going to give a trigger warning, of sexual assault on multiple occasions with multiple people, and one of those people being his son. Yvette Olsen accused Neville Cooper of assaulting her with a wooden object while they had alone time in his office. His son Philip also accused him of sexual assault while they were discussing his potential future marriage. Cooper denied all this. 1995 is when Neville Cooper went to prison. I wish I could say he stayed there, but he did not. He was found guilty on 13 counts of sexual assault. He was ordered 5 years in prison, however, he only stayed 11 months there. However, no one in Gloriavale actually knew that that was the reason why he was arrested. In fact, everyone told the group that he was arrested for preaching the word of God. After Neville Cooper left prison, he really hunkered down on their beliefs. He remarried twice after that. The first marriage didn't last long because the woman he married died a couple of years later. And he was in his 60s when he married his third wife, who was 17 years old. That is gross. Neville Cooper claimed that he retired in 2010 from his duties at Gloriavale and basically led his group of men, also known as the Shepherds, to run the organization. Although, let's be honest, I bet you he was running this thing till the day he died in 2018 from cancer. Now let's talk about the group. So this 3-part series is on Amazon Prime if you're interested in watching it. Although this series does not get into the history of the founding of Gloriavale, which is why I did the beginning like I did, it hides the fact that Neville Cooper was accused of all these terrible crimes, and I want to talk about him because I think it needs to be talked about. So as you may have guessed, Gloriavale is a very, very cut off community. They don't interact with the outside world, and anything that they're taught that the outside world is actually evil. Although, let's be honest, how else are they making money? It has to be the outside world, which I think is ironic that they teach the evils of the outside world while relying on the outside world for all their resources. So I'm going to get this out of the way. The dressing of each of the members. The women wear blue dresses with head covering. The men dress in white shirts, blue bottoms, and blue ties. And yes, even the children dress like this. They say the reason why they're dressed in blue is because of their modesty. And this is how they normally dress. So in this series, we get to learn a little bit more about the community itself. We learn early on that the Shepherds are the group of men that basically control everything, actually control everything from where people will live to what jobs they will have when they are old enough. The men do a lot of the labor work, including construction, the farming business, and any other repair work that needs to be done. The women cook for the community, do the laundry for the community, and they sew for the community as well. Oh, and they have babies too, because they don't believe in birth control in this community. In fact, Neville Cooper has called birth control murder and evil. Of course, the Shepherds play this off as, oh, do you want to be this? But basically forcing them to be that. Because disobeying this organization is basically disobeying God in their eyes. Also, no one gets paid for any of their jobs, even the businesses that the men work to. All money goes to Gloriavale in a pool, basically. So the first episode in the series, we follow a guy named Paul Valor. He's 19 years old and he wants to get married. Like I mentioned before, Neville Cooper controlled marriages, and in this case, the shepherds actually control marriages. Here's a clip of Paul talking to the shepherds about marriage.
First, he must seek advice and permission from the shepherds.
The first thing I did was go and talk to my father and told him I wanted to get married and asked him if he thought I was ready to get married. And he said yes.
I understand you want to talk to us about something on your heart?
I'd like to get married. I believe that it's God's will for me to get married.
You're being responsible in the young people, and you've got the Lord in your heart.
Somebody specially prepared for you.
They have got lists of all bloodlines, and so when you come and ask them to get married, they can give you a list of, 5 or 6 girls who you can marry.
And you thought Duggar engagements were very awkward and that they didn't get to know each other very well before they got married? Wait till you check out Gloriavale, because they don't know each other at all.
And then I talked to her parents, talked to her father actually, and he didn't have a problem with me marrying Pearl. So I asked him to talk to her mother with my flowers, and I asked her to marry me. She had to go away and think about it and pray about it, and if she believed that it was God's will for her to marry me now, that she should say yes. The next day at lunchtime, she gave me a note that said yes.
That's right, it's a middle school romance, because that's how I got my first boyfriend, by a note. And if that wasn't awkward enough, he makes an announcement. And this is where a lot of announcements actually happen, is around dinner time, birth announcements, engagements. I'll show you in the next part. So after we meet Paul's future wife, Pearl, we learn a lot more about baptism. Now, I was baptized when I was 17 years old, but in Gloriavale, being baptized is a big deal. It's basically committing your life to this community and the church itself.
I surrendered my will when I was baptized and gave my life to God.
I believe that Jesus is the Son of God and he died to take away my sin. And when I go under these waters, I'm going to come up a new creature.
Amen. In the name of Jesus Christ, we bury you. Hallelujah.
Paul goes on to say that nobody in the community forms friendships. Basically, men and women do not form friendships. In fact, for the most part, men and women don't know each other while they're engaged for the most part. This is the period of time they call courtship, is when they're engaged to get married in 6 weeks' time. Oh, don't worry, we'll get to their marriage in a second, because I think it's very important to talk about. Like I mentioned, they do have schools on the premise. However, they basically teach the basics. Because let's be honest, Gloriavale is not meant to branch out and do your own thing. They have childcare, preschool, and basic education on the premise.
They're big on the basics here and follow the New Zealand curriculum for the most part. However, when it comes to history, they have their own approach, teaching creationism over evolution.
Okay, so where did dinosaurs first appear in the Bible then? Lois? And creation.
A lot of kids start working at a young age in Gloriavale. In fact, they've gotten in trouble multiple times by the Department of Labor in New Zealand for this. In fact, as late as September of 2020, they got in trouble for overwork. They not only got in trouble for having workers work more than 20 hours a day, but safety issues as well.
Learn about, what kind of pots test what things. That's what their science is about. Heat transfer for cooking.
What are the 4 conditions we need for microbe management? Grace.
Time, temperature.
How to look after children, all things that are going to be useful to them as they live in the community.
Even women that are part of families also have to work, although they don't have to work as much as the younger single ladies do. All the single ladies get to work more. So let's talk about the living arrangements. I'm jumping around in this series because that's what the doc series does. However, just know that I'm jumping around in case you watch it and you're like, why is she doing this? So basically the people of Gloriavale lives in dorms, and each family is assigned a dorm, and Anybody who is married gets their own separate dorm afterward. That's right, a whole family is crammed into one dorm.
House. Accommodation for the 500 residents is split between 4 big hostels, with each family assigned a room, or 2, depending on their need. After the wedding in a couple of days, Paul will move to a new room with Pearl, near her parents.
9 brothers and sisters for a long time now. I guess there's a little bit of a sense of loss there.
There is one night, however, that they do get to interact with the outside world, and that's concert night. And honestly, concert night sounds like a lot of fun. In fact, they do this all for free. And they dance, unlike the Duggars.
Culmination of a lot of practice and a lot of thought come together. It's our way of saying thanks. The people of this area really are grateful.
The audience arrives. The place is humming.
Hello, folks. How are you tonight? Ready to go?
Those not on stage are preparing a 4-course meal. All of it free. Dancing routines are always part of the mix, but because physical contact's likely, it's not something single guys like Paul will get to enjoy.
Whenever the married couples, with a man, a single man, or a married man with a girl or somebody else's wife.
See, Duggars, even the married couples dance in this cult. See, I don't understand why the Duggars don't let their kids dance. Now let's talk about the actual wedding of Paul and Pearl. See, unlike most marriages, they don't believe in wearing white because they don't believe that white is actually meaningful anymore. Which, by the way, who made that rule that white was the symbol of virginity anyway? Instead, the husband actually picks out what color dress they want their wife to wear on their wedding day.
Every girl that gets married gets a pink or pale blue dress, and that's up to the husband to decide, the new husband to decide which colour they would like their wife to have. Most of them choose pink.
You can obviously tell that the men run this community hardcore. The fact that it's the husband's decision to decide the dress color of his future wife just tells you all right there. And we're going to get to the wedding itself in the next part. See, in Gloriavale, they don't celebrate birthdays or holidays like Christmas and Easter. They do have celebration days here and there, but they basically don't celebrate all the religious holiday that we're known for celebrating. So you can see why they make such a big deal out of weddings, because it's basically a time to celebrate. They do have bachelorette parties, although they're very tamed compared to what we celebrate here. And I'm not going to show you because I've already took up your time with all these parts. And of course, this wouldn't be a Gloriavale wedding without it being awkward. That's right. Your parents set up your, consummation for you. It's really awkward. I'm sorry if I'm laughing, but it's so awkward. So basically the wedding is a 2-hour event. Along with the normal sermon, they have the wedding in between then.
We're shy Pearl. All the attention is stressful.
Turn them on now.
And the Lord will bless you if you keep. I love you lots.
So I'm about to show you a clip of Neville Cooper speaking at Pearl and Paul's wedding, and he sounds just as creepy as I described him earlier.
Themselves, but it's confirmed and sealed in that relationship when a man makes love to his wife that first time.
Now it's time for the couples to make their vows in front of each other. And it's awkward.
My darling, I promise that I will always put God first in my life. I promise I will always obey the leaders and I will lead you in the right ways.
Because of God's love, and I'm saved because of God's love, and I love you because of God's love, and I'm yours.
So after most marriages, the couples will take photos and go to the reception. But in Gloriavale, they consummate their marriage right after the ceremony. I am not joking.
They get prayed for, everyone prays for them. They go off and consummate that marriage, come back and have a meal.
That's right, they lose their virginity and then have to go back and eat dinner. This is really creepy, especially that kid that had to drive them to where they were going to do that. And pretty much after that, it's expected that the girls have children and become mothers. Now, I didn't go into all the details of the first episode because like I said, it's a 3-part series. So they go into detail a lot more about other things like how they deal with death, how they deal with birth, and other episodes. They do talk about birth, however, they do all births on premise, basically, unless it's an emergency. So like I mentioned, Neville Cooper died in 2018. And what's left of Gloriavale is probably a shell of what I just showed you. In fact, in the next part, I will show you what's happened since. So in 2018, when Neville Cooper died, they sort of lost control of the group itself. Now, the special that I showed you actually aired in 2012 when Neville Cooper was still alive. Obviously, I showed you the clip of him. But since then, a lot of people have left, and a lot of people are speaking out against Gloriavale. This article came out about a week ago explaining a lot of accusations, sexual assault accusations against members in Gloriavale, and not just Neville Cooper. Even Neville Cooper's own granddaughter has spoken out against the church after she left. So here's my conclusion. I think it's fascinating to learn about organizations and cults like Gloriavale, and yes, I believe that Gloriavale is a cult. However, we have to keep a lens and an eye on organizations like this. They hide a lot of dark secrets, and they're probably hiding a lot of horrible things. It's also good to educate ourselves about these groups. I had a lot of fun doing this, and because it was my birthday, I really wanted to talk about Gloriavale for a while. Like I said, I didn't go into details of every single thing that happens on, but maybe one day I will actually go in depth into each episode. If you want to learn more about Gloriavale, I use this as a source, the episode of Cults, the podcast called Cults, they did an episode about Gloriavale. I highly recommend that. Also, like I mentioned, Neville Cooper's granddaughter, she actually did this TED Talk that's actually really good. Her name is Lilia Tarwa. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. She also wrote a book called Daughter of Gloriavale, My Life in a Religious Cult, which I recommend you read as well. Also, this article that I showed you, which is from stuff.co.New Zealand NZ. I hope you guys enjoyed all the parts. It's been a couple hours of working on this, but I really enjoyed talking about it, and hopefully maybe I'll talk about it again.